Hi, and welcome to Real Trail Talk. I am Donovan D'Souza from The Long Ways Better.
And I'm Mark Pybus from The Life of Pi. Welcome to episode 95. We are seeing you from the NT this episode, to quote their famous or infamous catchphrase, and we're doing day walks of the Northern Territory. So we've both visited a few times, and between us we've covered almost everything apart from, I think, Kakadu.
I think there's also a few sort of like obscure parks. There's like one heading towards Western Australia and one heading towards Queensland that has some interesting stuff, but probably not as commonly visited.
Yeah, so we'll try and cover like the main attractions, I think, over the course of the NT, working our way from Darwin in the north down to Alice Springs, Uluru in the south. I think is a fairly easy way to do it, given there's a major highway running up and down the Northern Territory.
Yeah, for sure.
So we'll start in Darwin. How much walking have you done in the Darwin area?
Not a lot. I did the one that's like in their like tiny national park.
Charles Darwin National Park?
Yeah, that one.
What did you think of that one?
They did a prescribed burn not long before, so I was like, yeah, it's okay.
Yeah. That one, I was horribly disappointed at that one, because I think there's only one real like walk in the area, and it's a very short loop, and it kind of just goes between some World War II artifacts, and that's about it.
Yeah.
And then we had, I'm not sure if you got them when you were there, just midges biting you incessantly.
I don't remember that. I remember the World War II stuff, but basically I think it says a lot that I deemed it unworthy of writing up for the blog.
Yeah, I think I only wrote up because I really enjoyed the photos looking back at the Darwin skyline from that lookout.
Yeah.
But yeah, that one was okay. I think the area is more set up for mountain biking. I believe when I was there, they were investing a bit of money going forward into that. So
yeah,
probably better to bring your bike to Charles Darwin.
Yeah.
So in the city itself, not really a hike, but a walk. But one that I really enjoyed was around the waterfront area.
Oh, yeah.
In Darwin.
Yeah.
So Stokes Hill Wharf, and then going through the waterfront precinct, and then along the main kind of beachy strip thing where you've got the old swimming holes and all the World War II artifacts. It's a fun walk, and it kind of connects you with the history of Darwin.
Yeah, I think Darwin's a really cool place. You know, like I think sometimes people have quite a negative view of it being like, you know, this kind of small capital middle of nowhere. But, you know, it feels to me very much like an Asian city.
Yeah, when I was there, I felt more Hawaii than...
Right, okay.
But yeah, Southeast Asia works as well.
Yeah. It feels like old Singapore, old Malaysia. And I think it's telling that laksa is the dish of the Northern Territory.
Yeah. And some beautiful buildings along that waterfront as well. The Parliament building, I could photograph that thing all day.
Yeah.
And yeah, like the World War II history, because you kind of like, you don't forget that Darwin was involved, but like it was the epicenter of basically Australia's World War II effort, trying to defend our homeland. And yeah, kind of, I just find it terribly interesting, and like just the whole, like trying to think back to what life would have been like back then.
Yeah. And I thought the art gallery in Darwin was also really good. So I think, you know, there's a lot of things to see, even though maybe the hiking is substandard, you know, the walking around is definitely worthwhile.
Yeah, definitely one of the best ways to get around Darwin, provided it's not the wet season, it's 40 degrees and 100% humidity.
Yeah, yep.
So another trail that's sort of close to town, it's a bit north, is the East Point Science Trail, which is I think 8 or 9 kilometers, and it takes you through a variety of landscapes. So it's got like the mangroves where the crocodiles are, like open parkland, and then kind of loops back around. You get views of the city across the bay as well, where all some of the fancier restaurants are. And I don't know, I just found it a really, really fun walk.
Yeah, cool.
And then a bit out of town, you've got places like Holmes Jungle, sort of, I guess you'd call remnant bushland / jungle. There's some short walks there, and it's kind of nice. This feels very dry sometimes if it's not the wet season. But then there's some lots and lots of interesting plants and trees and creeks along there.
Yep.
And then Howard Springs and Fog Dam a bit further out of town. I guess the same sort of thing, just lots of short walks because it's the territory and it gets hot.
Yeah, it seems there's a lot of these sort of like you walk to like a small feature, kind of a bit more touristy oriented than necessarily like a hardcore hiker kind of trail. Yes, obviously there are some real trails, but there's a lot of that I think in certain areas.
Yeah, and I guess like there is the real danger of crocodiles around Darwin, and a lot of the area is very flat, so it's not like you're going to get elevated hills to hike on.
Yep.
Moving south, a place that we've both visited and enjoyed quite a lot is Litchfield National Park.
Yeah, I feel like Litchfield is it's basically the closest national park to Darwin, so it's sort of like their backyard, and it's it's definitely worth visiting. I think it's so easy to visit. Like I was there for work and I spent the weekend visiting, and it was an excellent experience.
Yeah, and the way it's all laid out is it's pretty much like a one-way loop. You can go in either direction, but all the attractions and walks are found along the same route, so you're not really backtracking or having to go too many different places. But the problem you get with that is, depending on where you start, you may just be moving along the line with all the other tourists.
Yeah, there is that sort of slightly frustrating nature to it. And again, because while the tabletop track exists that links up all the sites, it's also very much a like, let's drive to here's the main feature, and then you leave is the vibe of a lot of these places.
Yeah. But some fantastic walks. Like we've said, Darwin's pretty flat, but Litchfield has some hills and some gorges and a lot of stunning waterfalls. So within that, you've got Wongi Falls, Florence Falls, Jataba Falls, Tolma Falls, and a few creeks as well that have some fantastic hikes along them.
Yeah.
What was your favourite hike within Litchfield?
I only did, I think, 2 or 3. I did Wangi Falls and Greenant Falls or Greenant Creek.
Greenant, or if you pronounce it
Grenant?
like I did for ages and ages, Grenant, because in the name, they don't separate out green and ant.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I'm like, oh yeah, I saw green ants. That's probably what it is.
Is it creek or falls?
So that's Jataba Falls, and Green Ant Creek or Grenant Creek is what you hike along at the start.
Yeah, I really like that one because you get to have like a nice little swimming hole at the top of the falls.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit more quiet than like Wangi Falls is like full on.
Oh yeah, I mean, the height of the school holiday season in July is just packed.
Yeah, I mean it's a beautiful waterfall.
Yeah,
it's a real stunner, but too many people.
Yeah, I mean, it is one of those places where there's lots of room for everyone. Like grassed areas, and then when you actually get into the water, you can usually find a spot. One that I really enjoyed was Walker Creek. So it's kind of out of the way, and along the creek is individual campsites that you can book out. So even though it's only, I think, 3 to 4 kilometres return, is like if you want to stay in Litchfield National Park and away from everyone else, that's an option as well. Just hike in with your tent and everything, and you've usually got a swimming spot all to yourself. So that's an option if you want to kind of get away from it all. And then there is Janira Falls, which is four-wheel drive access only down to the south.
Okay.
Which I'm guessing is probably a lot quieter as well.
Yeah.
But that one seems like a cool one. And then Kakadu National Park, which is kind of east of Litchfield and Darwin. I really want to visit, but it means another trip to the Northern Territory.
Yeah, and I've heard I think people say "kakadu," "kakadon't." It's like, and obviously I haven't done it, so I can't say yay or nay to that.
Yeah.
But that's the feedback a lot of people say.
I don't know. I just get the vibe from it that it's like what Americans and Japanese tourists think when they think of Australia is like kakadu and crocodiles and the outback and that sort of thing. And like, yeah, having not visited, I'm not entirely sure what the place is all about, but I don't know. It seems very touristy.
Yeah, and I think there's also a lot of probably because it's so touristy, there's a lot of also sensitivities around like sacred sites and stuff. So some places that have been open have been closed, some of the better places. And I understand why, because I'm sure there was disrespect. But it just makes you kind of not want to go if the sites that are worth visiting are closed because, people have acted up and been a problem.
Yeah. But I mean, just looking at what's there, there's quite a lot. A lot of it you do need to have a high clearance four-wheel drive with a snorkel. That came up a lot in the research.
and that makes me very nervous if that's the case, given what's in the water.
Like you always know that those warnings are a bit over the top, but then some of them, it's like, yeah, you're going to have to go like bonnet deep into a creek sometimes to get to it. But I mean, most of the time you're going to be hiring a like mine spec Prado or something anyway that has that. But yeah, Jim Falls is one of the popular ones out there. Same with Twin Falls Gorge and the Plateau Walk. There's lots of little walks around like wetlands that look quite interesting given the bird life in the Northern Territory. And having not been converted to twitching or birding, I think I'd enjoy that quite a lot. But yeah, it's just one of those places that if you're going to do it, I think you have to do it properly. Like spend a week or 10 days with a four-wheel drive just to get to all the really cool spots.
Yeah.
And then moving further south, Nitmaluk National Park. So this is one that I did a couple of years ago, and you are quite keen to get out there and experience it.
I am and I am not. So I think one of the things I've realized with this, with the walk there that's probably the most famous, which is the Japula, is it's very much a hike that's about the destinations rather than the journey. It's kind of, the last episode we talked a bit about this, and I like walks where the journey is sort of the focus. Particularly now that I'm doing YouTube. If you're gonna make a video, right, and the journey is boring, but then the campsites are great, it's kind of hard to really the time. The videos will be really short if the journey is just really dull. And my mate Kevin did it just last year, and what he showed me didn't fill me with like excitement for the walking between campsites. The campsites though look magnificent, and our friend Bonnie has done it and said it was a really good walk. So
yeah, I kind of get the same feeling with the tabletop walk in Litchfield as well. Like I've seen sections of that and I'm like, do I want to be doing that in 30-degree heat with a full pack on?
Yeah.
If all I'm doing is hiking to these amazing spots and then just linking them up with this kind of ordinary trail. But Nitmaluk, I think, is a bit different. Like, obviously, I haven't hiked the Japula, but I've done, like, the longer walks in that same area. And I was expecting it to be kind of, you walk out to a gorge or a lookout or something and then that's it. But the walking out there was really, really cool. Like, there's rocky hills, there's lots of different vegetation types. It wasn't, like, the walking out there was still interesting to me. And there are quite a few like longer options if you haven't booked a Japula. There's campsites on the other side of the Catherine River to explore. But the ones that I really enjoyed was out to Jedda's Rock via the Windolph Walk. And we talked about in the last episode that I don't really enjoy the network style of trails out there. But the quality of the trails is quite high in terms of what you're seeing. It's just unfortunate you have to walk that same four-wheel drive track to get out there quite often. Same thing with Butterfly Gorge is like, yeah, you get to see it when you're doing the boat tours and kayaking and everything, but it's kind of different hiking out there and getting to spend a bit of time just on your own. And then the other side of Nipmuc is Leland Falls, I believe it is, commonly known as Edith Falls, and there's a nice little 2 or 3 kilometre loop that takes you to a couple of swimming spots and see the waterfalls.
Yeah.
Very popular spot, but yeah, worth it. And that's the finishing point of the Jatbula. So you can do that last section to Sweetwater Pool.
Just as a day walk.
Just as a day walk. So yeah, I would recommend Nipmuc. It is a nice area, and like the visitor centre's well set up there too.
The photos on your blog and also what Kevin showed of the other walks he did look really good, and it made me go, I want to go, but not for the intention I originally had, which Jatbula was one that was very high on my list of ones to do. And then seeing the, walking through like prescribed burnt, just like grasslands, just did not fill me with excitement.
Yeah, but like you kind of have to expect that from the Northern Territory. Like it's different from in WA where they're doing it to a quota and sometimes they get out of hand.
Yeah.
Like it's really necessary in the Northern Territory, and like the times that I've visited, you can see them out there by hand, and their little like kind of golf buggy type things is just burning all the grass, because if they didn't, they'd be in a lot of trouble.
And look, I get that they have to do. I'm not anti them doing it, but it doesn't look nice.
No.
So it doesn't make me want to walk those trails in the sort of the sort of semi-tropical northern part of the state.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, they are pretty good about it. And it just does come down to timing. So remember when I did the Wongi Falls walk, like the first section was really burnt, but then the last section was really nice because they hadn't burnt yet. So I don't know, luck.
Yeah.
And then moving south, so about an hour from Catherine is Mataranka and Elsie National Park. So again, kind of very short walks. You've got the hot springs there that that area is known for. So you got the Mataranka Hot Springs and Bitter Springs, and they both have kind of very short, loopy walks around.
Very Instagrammable, like the springs.
Yeah. And don't be that person at Mataranka to there's I think it's called Rainbow Pool. Just stick to the boardwalks. Don't get out and like try and get your photo taken with the like super blue water. It's just anyway. But in Elsie National Park, you've got a walk called the Botanical Walk, and it's a very small loop, but it's at the end of, like, I think it's a 25k walk you can do along that river, which I don't understand why people would do that one way. But it does explore, like, the typical Northern Territory kind of scrubland out there. And then much, much further south is we're reaching these kind of niche places that people do tick off, which Devil's Marbles, which often gets shown on Instagram and in all the tourism ads.
Yeah,
as a place that you want to walk, and I think there's 3 short walks around there as well. I guess it's really, you're only doing that if you're driving from Catherine to Alice Springs.
It's a really long distance because like having gone, I've been to Darwin and I've been to Alice, and I've not been between the two, and I've never had a reason to go there because it's a nice to do if you're in between, I believe, but it's just a long distance to travel just for that. Yeah,
and it is good having stuff there just off the highway to break up a journey, but yeah, you'd only really do it if you're doing the north to south or south to north road trip of the NT.
Yep.
And that brings us to kind of, I would say, the epicenter of hiking in the Northern Territory.
The Red's epicenter.
The Red epicenter. So Alice Springs, which break up into 3 sections. So we'll go Tropina Gorge to start with. Now, I've not done any hiking around here, but you just finished that last year, and the YouTube series is being released at the moment. So
yeah, so I think by the time this comes out, they should all have come out, or they almost all will have come out. So check them out on YouTube. Yeah, so Trofina Gorge is east of Alice. So the McDonald's are like a range that run on either side of Alice Springs. And the West McDonald's is the more famous one because that's where the Larapinta is. And then the East McDonald's are on the other side, less famous. And also, if you're heading that way, you're heading towards a place called Ross River. So, there's like a place called Ross River Resort. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's not a great reputation.
Not the best branding going on.
But the East McDonald's are definitely worth checking out, even though the West McDonald's get all the attention. And Trofina Gorge itself is, yeah, it's okay. There's a walk that you do through the gorge, and I did that with Alyssa and Miles. It's fairly family friendly. There are some options where you can go up the other side, and it's like a bit of a mountain you can climb up. But there's better gorges elsewhere in both the Northern Territory and WA for that kind of outback kind of experience. But in this park, it's 100% worth doing the Chain of Ponds walk. So this is a walk that I ran into a ranger, and he said this is the best walk in the park. And basically, you walk across the top along the rim of the gorge, and then head into it, and it's like a Carragini gorge. And it is like a stunner. If you're into like geology and rocks, then this is a walk for you. And if you do it in the wet season, you will have to like basically swim or wade through sections, because I've seen Kevin's blog post of it, and he was like having to like wade through and swim through sections. But if you do it in the dry season, it's pretty easy.
Yeah.
There's this one section though where you reach a dead end, and there's all these arrows pointing for you to go up and out, but there's like this waterfall drop that you can kind of see from the trail, and it looks pretty awesome. And you kind of want to abseil down, but you have to walk around because it's just too dangerous.
Yeah.
That would be the sort of the main walk on the east side of the range.
Yeah.
And then probably most of the actions in the West McDonald's.
Yeah. So closer to Alice, you've got Stanley Chasm and the Pound Walk at Ormiston Gorge.
Stanley Chasm is a fairly short, family-friendly walk, and I believe that this is owned by an Indigenous Land Corp, and you have to go through like this turnstile to get in. I believe if you're doing the Larapinta, you can just go through, but otherwise, if you're a day visitor, you have to do it through there. And it's basically like a fairly simple walk out through the gorge to this very beautiful chasm in the range, and there's a little bit of a pool of water there. Yeah, very stunning. I think if you go there the right time of day, the sun like shines through. But I didn't time it for that because this was a completely. We weren't meant to do this walk. As when we get to talk about Kings Canyon, I'll explain why.
Okay.
Yep. And Ormiston Pound. So Ormiston Pound is probably the most epic. Like if you do one walk in the West McDonald's, that's the one to do. And basically you walk out along the Larapinta and then you verge off and you go into this like really massive canyon. And it's just like stunning through the canyon. It's like just huge walls of just rock, red rock. And then there's these bits where you have to wade through pools. And at the time of my visit, there were like just dead fish in the water. And it was like really gross, but also just awesome fun.
So a walk for Gollum, I'm hearing.
Yes. And maybe I'm underselling it by talking about the dead fish, but yeah, it's just so spectacular. And a lot of people say, like, if you want to get a sense of the Larapinta in one day, that's the one to get the vibe.
Yeah, watching your video, I was just like, okay, that's pretty stunning. I'll have to mark that one down as a must do. And then kind of the West McDonald's from there, you've got Mount Sonder, which I think people do that as a separate day trip off the Larapinta.
Yeah, it's a pretty long day walk. So if I had done it as a day walk, it was going to take me all day to do it. And I thought, kind of want to save it for finishing the Larapinta, because a lot of people on the last day, they leave their main pack, go up to the summit and come back. And that's sort of like the traditional east to west finish for the trail.
Yeah.
So I did do some other walks there, like Ellery Creek Dolomite Walk, which is a short one. Again, like I think this felt very much like a Litchfield walk, in that there was like a swimming hole that was 15 minutes or like not even from the car park.
Yeah.
And then there was like a walk nearby that was kind of fun to do. And this one again, like, I feel like there's a big difference between the grasslands in the sort of semi-arid red center versus the north. I feel like the tropical ones just look a bit untidy looking. So even though they do prescribed burns in the West McDonald's, it doesn't have the same untidiness factor that I don't like about the north.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess, I don't know, it must rain a lot more up the north, so it's kind of, it grows a lot quicker.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they do use the Larapinta as the basis for quite a few of the day walks as well.
Yeah.
So there's like Red Bank Gorge as well. There's quite a few, like, I was doing the research today, and there's just a lot of walks. Looks like you could base yourself there without doing Larapinta and be quite occupied during your time.
Yeah, so Kevin says very often when you ask him about like different states, he says like the next level of like day walking is in the Northern Territory, because they've got so much, particularly in the Red Centre, there's just so many trails to do that can be done as a day walk. And yes, some other regions have better multi-days, but the standard in the Red Centre, considering that they're quite a poor area, is really high.
Yeah. Because, I think what people don't realise is just the mountain range there.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Like, they just picture, like, because you see the main photo you see from the Red Centre is Uluru, and it's pretty high, but it raises out of a very flat landscape.
Yes.
Whereas the McDonald's, like, there's some quite high peaks in there.
Yeah, and you're basically, as you're driving down the road, it's just like mountains on both sides of the road. And pretty epic. Even just driving from place to place and all the different, things that you can see, it makes for an epic road trip of just day walks.
Yeah. And then kind of the third bit of Alice Springs is Finke Gorge. And there's a lot of walks in there as well. Yeah,
so it's a bit far. You have to, and you also need a high clearance four-wheel drive. So when we did this, our trip itinerary started in Uluru, then we did Kings Canyon, then we went to the West McDonald's, then we went back to Alice, swapped cars, and then I did a day where just by myself I went out to Finke Gorge. And yes, you definitely need a high clearance four-wheel drive, because it's like very slippery, just rubble you're driving through to get through the gorge. And I didn't do the furthest walks, so there's stuff in Palm Valley, and I did one lot of the Palm Valley walks that was closer to the start. But if you want to do the ones that are deeper in the park, there's like, you have to kind of drive down like rock slabs and stuff like that, which would probably destroy your car suspension if you don't have a high clearance four-wheel drive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did that make you want to buy the special anniversary edition of the Jimny?
Oh yes. I am at the moment trying to convince Alyssa that our future is a 5-door Jimny, but I'm getting a little bit of resistance to that.
Yeah.
But I do really like it. I mean, I used to own a Jeep Wrangler when I was much younger, and so it feels to me like the economical Jeep Wrangler, because I would not recommend a Jeep Wrangler for the upkeep cost.
Yeah. We've sidetracked a little bit, but I've always wanted a little Jimny.
Yep.
But I think they're maybe just a little uncivilized around town. Like, even though it's nice to have the option to be able to do some four-wheel driving. So I did do one lot of walks, which is the Mpara and Kalaranga walks in
let me just say that. So if I had one, I would make sure that I was doing multiple, big 4-wheel drive trips to make it worth the money. And then probably sell it after 5 or 6 years or something. Yeah.
No, they are cool little cars.
Yeah.
We have sidetracked. And then
So when I went to Palm Valley, there's 2 sections. The bit that was deeper in has the real, the Palm Valley area, a lot of palms. But the Mpara Kalaranga walks were the ones that were closer. And I was recommended that the Palm Valley one was better. But knowing me and what I saw of the photos, I love rocks more than the plants. I know that sounds really bad, but the geology really is something that really interests me with a walk because, a tree can look great this year or look terrible the next, but the rocks are likely to remain looking good for much longer. And this walk was fantastic. I was really glad I did it because you walk basically along the Finke River, and it has the palms, so you get to see some of the palms here, and then you walk up this sort of through the valley up to this sort of rocky lookout, and you get to look across this plain where there's these big kind of rock mountains. I don't know what to call them, but yeah, they're really spectacular. And then you walk through it, and then the second walk takes you out to a lookout where you get to kind of just take it all in. Definitely well worth, it was inconvenient. I had to change cars just to get here. But was it worth it? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Cool. And then further south, so Wataka, I hope I'm saying that correctly, National Park. So this was Kings Canyon and the Giles Track, which is quite a lengthy one for a day walk.
So Giles Track, you can do it in a day. I did it in a day just out of... Well, they don't have campsites with toilets. And I was like, you know what? I don't really like doing that. I'm just going to walk it and suck it up and do it all in one day. And so it's really great. So you start at Kathleen Springs and basically just keep going until you reach Kings Canyon. And the end of it is basically descending from the top of Kings Canyon. And yeah, the scenery along this is outstanding. There's just... there's a lot of little dry creeks with creek beds with a lot of rock, lots of just stunning landscape, and you're basically walking across a range. And the highlight of this walk is there's this section where you're basically just walking along the edge of an escarpment, and the view is basically a mini bungles that you get to see. So you see all these domes.
Yeah.
And then you get to walk through that on the way to Kings Canyon. So, yeah, this was a bucket list hike. And I was so glad that I did it, even though it took all day. And I made some dumb errors. I started walking to Kathleen Springs and went, oh, I missed the turnoff. And it's pretty obvious. I shouldn't have missed the turnoff. And then I thought I lost my drone. And I spent an hour going back to search for it. And then I realized that I got distracted when some other people came and I put it down on the floor somewhere else and found it. So yeah, a lot of dumb things, but it was a great walk. The real shame though was I didn't get to do Kings Canyon on that trip. And the reason is, if you are driving a non-4-wheel drive, because remember we changed cars after this, you can't drive from Kings Canyon directly to the West McDonald's because it's an unsealed road and you will get massively pinged by the hire company. So while I was doing the trail, Alyssa saw at the Kings Canyon Resort that you can't go that way. You have to go all the way around. So we lost 4 hours of the day or something.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a massive detour because it was an hour and a half. So we were oh yeah, we'll do Kings Canyon in the morning. And instead, had to leave it behind, which is a shame because it's, considered one of the best day walks in Australia. Yeah. But I'll have to leave it for another time. Yeah. But that's why we did Stanley Chasm at the wrong time, because I wasn't intending to do it.
There you go. And then last on the list of kind of destinations is the big one. When everyone thinks of the Northern Territory, it's Uluru.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to do there, even though they closed the Ayers Rock summit, as everyone used to call it,
Yes.
for good reason. But you can still do the Uluru Base Walk, which you did. And then there's lots of other little walks like Valley of the Winds, Walper Gorge, Liru Walk. Just seems like a place you can spend a few days and really enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a long drive. So we started there, and I would advise against doing that, just because the drive. Well, I would advise doing it because of having a kid and the kid being upset about the long journey times, and also because it ended up then us going to Kings Canyon and having to double back. If we had gone through and done, say, the East McDonald's first, West McDonald's, then gone to Kings Canyon, and then the next day had been a trip out to Uluru, then the diversion wouldn't have mattered as much. So, yeah, lesson learned. I wouldn't do that, and I hope other people take that advice. But Uluru itself, the base walk is outstanding. I know a lot of people were sort of, oh, why would you go if you can't do the summit? But no, I completely disagree. I think that you walk around and there's a lot to see, because it is actually a very varied rock. There's bits like there's bits where there's like, if on a rainy day you'll get a waterfall. There's water holes. There's sections where you're a little bit further away, so you get to kind of take in the view of the rock. It's, fantastic experience. And if you want to ride a bike around it, you can. If you want to ride a Segway around it, you can. So, it's a must-do experience, and it takes, a good chunk of the day, but it's absolutely worth doing.
Yeah. I don't know, something like that, I think you appreciate it more from the ground.
Yeah.
And it just seems like people were only doing the summit walk to be like, oh, I climbed Ayers Rock.
Yeah.
And that's it. And drones, even though you can't fly them in the area, you get to see what it's like through the tourism accounts anyway, the views from up there. So I don't think it's a great loss, and we should be respecting the traditional owners and their wishes.
Yeah.
So it's good to see that people are still visiting without the summit walk there.
Yeah. And, speaking about, respecting the elders and the traditional owners of the area, it should be said that the other walk there, so, Uluru Katajuta has the Valley of the Winds. Now, I didn't film this one because if you go to their website, National Parks Australia say that you shouldn't film it. Now, on the ground there, the information at the park doesn't tell you that. It does really explicitly at Uluru say you can't film certain sections, and obviously I didn't. But it's less clear. If I hadn't looked it up online, I probably would have filmed the Valley of the Winds. But because I saw it online, I went, look, I know that you're not really supposed to, and that is because the Katajuta is considered much more sacred to the Enungu people than Uluru is. But the walk itself is, I'd say, even better. It is one of the best walks in the area, and it's a shame I couldn't do a film of it.
Yeah.
But, I can just say it's worth doing, and you should do it.
I guess that kind of adds to the mystique, because a lot of hikes these days, you can go online, watch a video, read a blog post, whatever, kind of what you're going to get.
Yeah.
That kind of thing kind of intrigues me a lot more. Is you say it's a really, really good walk, but I can't show you any footage and there's limited photos, so that kind of makes me want to do it a bit more. Yeah,
and so just because as well, we drove up quite early that day, because the evening we were going to go to Kings, we had to be at Kings Canyon by the late Arvo. That was just outstanding driving through there, because you see it in the morning in the red glow of the rocks. And then when you're there, there's this one section where after the first big climb, you come up to the top and you're looking down into this valley between these massive boulders of giant red rock. And it is just mind-blowingly good. And yeah, it's one that I would definitely do again and take Miles to actually see and remember, because he did it as a kid in a backpack, not actually doing it. And yeah, if people if you're talking about, I missed out on climbing the summit, well, just do this one because this is probably even better. And I know people who have done the summit and said, Valley of the Winds is even better.
Yeah, cool. All right, that brings us to the end of our Northern Territory whirlwind talking about trails.
Yep.
I think it's, probably best to use this as a guide now today. I've got some names I can do up in an itinerary if I'm in the area. Do go and research a bit more, watch videos, read blog posts. And really enjoy your time in the Northern Territory. Yeah,
it's a vast place, and I think, I hope we've been able to express that there's sort of, I guess, two parts to it, and they're quite different, and they both have a lot of great things to offer for adventurers who want something a little bit different to what you get in particularly the eastern states.
Yeah, certainly putting the list together today, I was just like, oh damn, I could really do like a 3 or 4 week Northern Territory road trip. But that might have to be for another time. Yeah,
well, when we're going to eventually have a direct road from here all the way through the middle, the great shortcut.
Yeah.
So that would be a fantastic trip, I reckon.
Yeah, just load up 100 hours of real trail talk and we're there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So thanks for everyone for listening. If you want more guides or anything, the Long Way's Better YouTube channel and The Life of Pi has you covered. If not, I'm sure there's plenty of other resources out there.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode or any other episode of Real Trail Talk, then please rate us on whatever platform you're currently listening to us on. Ratings really help us to reach an audience, especially those who are looking to learn about the outdoors in Western Australia and Australia in general. If you had any questions or suggestions for future episodes, you can email us at realtrailtalk@gmail.com or contact us through our social media channels. Thanks again, and stay tuned for our next episode.